now, and it's always going to have an elite history, but an inclusive and a diverse wine ecosystem represents the experiences of winemakers that are not traditionally white male dominated.
Okay, and so can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you're doing to make sure that this landscape is more inclusive and it is diverse?
Yes. So the great thing about me starting my company is that I live in a diverse, multicultural region. So from Northern California, I was born and raised in Oakland, very pro-Black, also with other cultures in the mix. So basically it was embedded in me. And what that means to me is just, basically in allowing this industry to move forward. I think right now, typically the wine industry stays, it's refusing to change, but it's being forced to change. And COVID, unfortunately, we had to experience a pandemic or just the change in the culture of our environment to see that, people need to be represented more. So in the wine industry, what I plan on doing, or what I am doing, is adding a futurist mindset, a more inclusive mindset from the technology, from also within the inner workings of distribution, wholesale, export, and import, just making it look different than how the traditional model is, how traditional business is, integrating technology in all aspects of the supply chain.
Nice. Can you talk about some of the brands that you work with? So the brands are, because I know personally, I'm in Cape Town, South Africa right now, just in case you guys don't know. And in Cape Town, I try to do the same thing that I do in the States, is focus on brands that are made by Black people or women, just because I feel like when you go to the grocery store, these are brands that you can't see on the shelf. If you want to order them, they're not easily accessible. So I feel like my goal in life is to try to make these wine brands accessible to people. So can you talk about some of the wine brands that are in your portfolio?
Yes. So when I came in the industry, I started with an intent of wanting to represent Black-owned brands and also the broader brands of color. And so the brands that I currently, or that I've had in the past, that I also currently represent, were brands from California that were, owned by African American males and females, produced in California. Either they are winemakers from the vineyard or they private label their wines. Also the same with South Africa, Black South African men and women brands. And also, dominant brands that are not produced by African Americans, but the diversity piece is that they either have a diverse farming team, they have a diverse staff, they have equity ownership. So that to me also qualifies if a majority white brand has a Black person or a person of color that has some sort of ownership or level of investment or some type of supply chain investment in the company, and they're looking towards diversification, then I will also represent that brand. So that includes Silkbush, which is a South African brand. What else? Seven Sisters, House of Mandela. Also, there's a plethora of other brands. California brands are Flow brands, Flow wine brands, which is a California produced brand. So those are some of the brands that I have had, that I currently have, but I'm also going to be expanding. So, I was just out there in South Africa in March for about 2.5 weeks. So, I found out there were 70 Black owned South African brands. So I am going to be working with those brands. Also, I have Mahoudi's brands as well. So yeah, it's a growth opportunity for me.
You brought up a really good point. So, like, a lot of times when people think about diversity or opportunity in like a business sector, and we're talking about wine right now, they think, oh, it has to be a Black-owned brand, and that's the way that you can support it, right? But for me, I think about the entire value chain, the entire culture, right? So we're talking about making sure that we have people of color, women in management positions, in CEO positions, and that's really important. And the farm workers are well taken care of, and they're paid fairly. They're not paid in South Africa, they have this thing called the DOP system, or the dope system. Not the dope, it's the DOP system. I can't pronounce it. But basically, where they would pay farm workers with wine, like that would be their salary. Um,
Yeah.
but just
And
making sure, so that's what I do as well. I look at like the entire culture of a wine farm, and I try to see, like, are they giving back to their workers? Do they have programs where their workers can actually learn a new skill and maybe advance on that farm or advance in another career? And I know there's some really good examples in South Africa, and I'm not too familiar with the culture of wine in California. But if somebody's on the call and they know, like, we'll open it up for questions and comments, and you can tell us about some wine farms that are like culturally diverse and making sure that they're taking care of their people.
I
Um,
wanted to interject in South Africa, just to piggyback off what you said. Wine Women, which is founded by several Black women like Beverly from Wine Women Wines, as well as Seven Sisters, Vivian. They have called Wine Women in South Africa. And basically their motto is sustainability, is economic inclusivity, of allowing farming staff to have ownership in the farm. So the South African Black Winemakers Network is actually creating that network with the government, and also just starting that trend of having investment for their workers, like more of a cooperative model. So that is happening, and that's what I found out on my trip.
I love that. Now, speaking of supportive organizations for this route to diversity, and it's crazy because when I came up with the theme for Wine Over LA, I did this even before COVID happened. I was like, it's going to be called Diversity Wine Route, because I was doing some research and I saw like the Temecula wine route, Stellenbosch wine route, and I was like, you know what? We need a diversity wine route. We need to show people how to get to a level of diversity. So that's why the theme is called Diversity Wine Route. But speaking of how you get there, and I feel like it just takes allies, and it takes different communities and organizations that support people in the wine industry. So one of my favorites in the United States is Triple AV, AAAV, African American Association of African American Vintners, which was
Yeah.
started to help, people of color with education, scholarships, and, mentorships. And so I'm really proud of that organization. But I would like to see more. I would like to see more organizations stepping up, more organizations created so that people have support when they enter this wine business, because I feel like for me, that's probably one of the biggest things, is having that support when you enter this land of, like, it's the first time for most of us. My mom didn't grow up drinking wine.
Yeah.
So
Most
yeah.
definitely. And to piggyback, like you said, there are some current, like you said, the Association of African American Vintners. They've been around since 2002, founded by Mac McDonald, who owns Vision Cellars. The current president is Phil Long of Longevity, and board members on that board is the McBride sisters, Theopolis. So we have a strong network and I just became a member since my business has been in existence for 3 years. Now I can be more active in organization to help bridge the gap and be more of a newer voice. So I'm actually a member of the AAVA. Also, you have in the other people of color, MAVA, which is the Mexican American Vintners Association, which is very active. And I would love to see a coalition of the minority-owned wine brands partnering together so that each voice is heard. My primary focus is African Americans and Africans in the diaspora, that we need more ownership. But I'm also supportive of our allies and uplifting people of color, and also our white allies that want to support us, but allow us to have leadership in the area of wine and hospitality.
Yes, okay. I just love this conversation with you, because you know what? You're just guiding it, and you're bringing up a really good point, right? So when you talk about our white allies, and sometimes I know there's this group on Facebook called the Black Wine Lovers, right? Or if we say I support Black-owned brands, sometimes there might be some white people that say, like, well, what about white-owned brands, or is that reverse racism, right? And so, like, What would you say to your white colleagues, your white friends, your white family members? What would you say to them to make them feel comfortable in the space when we say, you know what, we want to promote these brands, but we're not saying that you're excluded from this fun. Like Wine Over LA is not an exclusive event; it's for everyone. But what would you say
Mhm.
to your white friends, colleagues, family members to make sure that they feel included?
So, and I love that question. And, in this time, we've always, as Black people, had to make people feel comfortable with our presence. And before I even directly answer that, I have to also give an example. When all of us are going into tasting rooms, we have to we have to feel comfortable. So how I would flip that to my white industry counterparts, my friends that are allies, that it's not on me to make you feel comfortable. It's something that, you know, that we're underrepresented. So I would, of course, just would love their support. I would just say that me saying a Black owned brand is not excluding, it's actually including, because traditionally the industry is white, male dominated European, and to really just do as much education, but also not be the dependency. I will give you the resources, but you have to go seek it. So I think this is a time where we're in the information age. So now is the time that Black owned does not mean we hate you. We want you to be included. White owned has always been the norm. I mean, we walk into it. I was just in Napa the other day, the
Mhm.
only African American. So
Yeah.
comfortability has to be reversed. I think we have to empower our white allies only from an aspect of stretching their mindset to let them know that it's something wrong if it's majority white, because the world is not majority white. Globally, Black people and people of color are the majority population. Here
Right.
in the States is majority white. So I think it's just that education, but just letting them know that brands are changing and it's okay. Your kids are coming up multicultural.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it does get a deeper dive, and it's not going to be in a way where it's offensive, but if you're offended, I think it's something they have to check. So I think that's why, the wine industry today, we're unapologetically um, open to saying we're Black owned, and you buy Black actually is part of American culture.
Yes, I get it. I mean, because like, we started out in this industry. I know I started out in this industry 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, when I would go to wine conferences, and I tell this story over and over again because I want people to understand how the landscape is changing. I would go to, for
Mhm.
example, the Society of Wine Educators Conference 3 years in a row, right? And every single year,
Mhm.
I was one of maybe the first year 3 Black people, maybe the second year 4 Black people, maybe the third year one of 6 Black people, in a room full of 2,000 people. 2,000 people. And so like I was forced to leave any baggage that I have, any pre-notions that I have at the door, check my ego, check my shoulder, make sure I don't have a chip on my shoulder, because I'm in a room of 2,000 people, right? And so that's
Mhm.
expected of us. But for a white person to come to a Black event, they might be the only white person there, and then they feel uncomfortable, and they shouldn't feel uncomfortable because I mean,
Yeah.
I was welcomed at the conference. Nobody was rude to me, nobody was disrespectful, and it would be the same thing if they came to our conference. um but
Yeah.
can you tell me, let's just talk about Wine Over LA a little bit. Can you tell me like what Wine Over LA means to you, or like, are you excited about the event?
Of course, I'm excited. I think it's great that you're offering, you've invited me a couple of times, but I was unable due to scheduling to attend. But some of my colleagues locally here and were able to attend and they loved it. So for me, actually, I'm a tech person. So I love this aspect. Of course, it's never going to replace the interpersonal, the in-person conference or experience. But for now, I think for me, it's going to allow me to be able to intermingle with my customers, new customers, to be in a multicultural environment with Black people, white people, Latino producers, everybody. And I think like that is so awesome. And then be able to just this is just a new whole landscape, and I'm so geeked out about wine and technology. So this is like, for me, exciting. So I'm excited. Thank you for doing this. I think to answer your prior question that you asked to me about our white allies, I think this gives them the opportunity to, see how we do things, and just see how it is okay to share our businesses with our friends. We make amazing wine to high end, 90 point plus, all the way to table drinking wine, to sweet, to rosé, to all types of palates. We own businesses. All of these things that the consumer of all races is going to find out.
Yes, and that's like the best thing that I love about Wine Over LA is because there's so many different palates that come to the table. There's novice wine drinkers, people who are just now starting off, and they might be like, well, where's the sweet table, But they might start off like that by the beginning of the night, but by the end of the night, they're like, oh my God, I really love red wine, They might taste Theopolis, who's been with Wine Over LA for a few years now. They might taste her Petite Syrah, and it changes their life, Or they might just go for the flow, which is an easy drinking table wine, and people buy that by the cases. So that's what I like about Wine Over LA. It's because people come with like one thing in mind, and by the time they leave, they have this totally different impression. Plus, the in-person is fun because we dance a lot. I forget that I'm working sometimes. All right, so we're going to open it up for questions. So if you have a question, you can put the question in the chat, or you can just raise your hand. I'll unmute you. I think you might be able to unmute yourself, but let's just see. Does anybody have any questions? Let me check Facebook to see if I have any questions on Facebook.
Okay.
While you guys get your questions together, don't be shy. Alicia, do you have anything else that you want to add? Because people come with sorry.
Well, I just, it's just, I'm loving seeing all of the, unfortunately, the events that happened with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, and how it's impacted us over these last couple of weeks. Some of the light at the end of the tunnel is that in all industries, I feel our voices are being heard. So in business, it's amazing that, especially in the wine industry, some of our peers like Julia has come out and posted, just expressing, racism in the wine industry and hospitality. And so now there's this interest of people wanting to know more about us. So I'm just glad to see that this explosion is happening. Unfortunately, had to take a life or just a tragedy, but the positive outcome is that we're getting ready to be heard, in all aspects. And I don't think this is going to be something temporary. I think this is an opportunity for long-term engagement, investment overall.
That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for the long-term effect, that people really become loyal to these brands and they buy these brands. And they not only for me, protest doesn't only mean going to the streets, right? Protest means redirecting your dollars and being more conscious and aware of what you're doing and how you're doing it. That's for me, that's the best protest. I've always tried to make it a point to spend at least 15% of my wine budget on brands that are made by African Americans or Black people or women. And so I just encourage everybody to take that model. Maybe if you can do more, do more. But I like wines from all over the world. Can you talk about, maybe, have you ever experienced, so now I don't want to make it negative, but have you ever experienced racism or discrimination at a wine event or in this wine world? Can you talk about that and maybe how you coped with it, how you dealt with it?
Yeah, so I used to be an ambassador for a brand. I'll just say it, the Bossé brand. I mean, they have amazing wines. They partner with John Legend, LVE, and they produce some amazing French and California wines. And that was the brand that I sold mostly, and I still kind of do a little partnership with them with his wines. So as an ambassador, I got access to go to the different tasting rooms, and I would bring guests to Raymond Vineyard. And so normally you either make an appointment or you don't. And normally when I went during the week with one of my guests, I just noticed the treatment of how I was being treated compared to my older white counterparts that were guests. And that treatment in the tasting room was just not going through and explaining the wines correctly, just certain etiquette that I know, and just pouring the wine and, just not really giving me the attention that you're giving the traditional white older male customers or female customers. So for me, I am very vocal. And I think that is the Oakland in me, because I'm from Oakland, born and raised. I'm tied to certain, it's in my DNA. So I literally, by the end of that day, so that shows how much action I took. I sent an email to corporate. I actually got the manager there. And so everything was changed, and I was able to get that one-on-one service. So I'm very action oriented. And so I've never had a problem. As far as being an importer or things like that, I'll get people thinking that I'm the salesperson, and sometimes, I hate to say it, that's like a motivator, because I want you to not think I'm the owner. Yeah. Because when it comes down to the final transaction and you see my face, I love the reaction. Yeah. So sometimes it motivates me. So a lot of it is just, how did you get in the industry? As if it's not an inquiry. It's more like, really? So I literally throw the question back at them like, well, how did you get in? Because I know how I got in. So sometimes it's a little back and forth, and I turn it into that. But yeah, it's going to be typical. I've had sexism, all of that. But again, how I avoid it, and I know this may be a little extreme, I haven't dealt with too many issues. And the reason why is because I was very deliberate in dealing with minority-owned brands, diverse brands. And so the events that I go to, even the wineries that I support, even if they're white wineries, I'm very intuitive, I call them, I give, so I go above and beyond, right. To kind of support businesses that are diverse. So, yeah. So that's kind of like an experience that I think a lot of people go through, but it's how you respond. I'm very vocal, and I believe all of us should be very vocal in your own way.
Yeah, and I think that that's important. So when you feel uncomfortable, or you feel like somebody's making you feel uncomfortable, whether it's, maybe it's because you feel like you're a woman or because you feel like you're Black. I mean, people say, oh, you're going to throw out the race card now, right? But let's just call it what it is, because we all can hear things and we all have emotions. And if it's not the race card, then just, to my white allies, if it's not the race card, then say, no, it has nothing to do with that. Maybe I was busy. Maybe I just didn't know, whatever, right? If it's not, it's not. But if I'm feeling uncomfortable, I feel like that's what we're saying. Just hear me out. Hear me say that. I know I was at a wine tasting room once, and we were ordering wines. We were going through the tasting menu, and then what they were giving me was really vanilla and really bland. But what I've learned is I'll say, do you have any library wines that are open maybe? Do you have any library wines we can taste? And then the guy looked at me, he was like, do you even know what a library wine is? And I was like, well, I don't think I would ask for one if I didn't know what it is. Do you know what it is? But I immediately got so offended, because I'm like, okay, is it because he's looking at me and thinking because I'm Black, I don't know wines? And, I don't want to walk around with a chip on my shoulder, but at the same time, I just feel like it takes a little bit of I don't know, maybe somebody else has the words to explain that. Cultural sensitivity, just not making assumptions. Okay, so let's see. Simone has a question. Simone, I can ask the question for you, or you can unmute yourself. But she says, how do you think we can move forward taking the eliteness out of wine? I work in wine, and I stress that wine is for the masses, but it's really on a micro scale, person to person. Did I get that right, Simone?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I work in Santa Barbara County in California. I've been here for a couple of years, but I've been in the wine industry for, I guess, about 6 or 7. But that is something that is always incredibly intimidating to people, is they feel like they have to be so sophisticated and they don't drink this specific type of wine because it's I think it's very common to think that red is more sophisticated than white wine. So you have to drink a bigger, richer red to appear like you know more. So I work as the general manager for this vineyard, so I don't really have a lot of one-on-one contact anymore, but it is something that I wanted to present in like a bigger scale, that wine it's cultural, and it's something that's shared in communities around the world. And in Europe, it doesn't have the same stigma that it does in the United States, just alcohol in general. So how do we pull that out instead of just tasting room experiences and people coming in that way?
Well, and I'm listening to key points, how you say you're a general manager. So that lets me know that you have some level of authority or implementation on developing a new system, or, so with training of your staff, and it's similar to like human resources, like diversity and inclusive training. Take that approach with the wine industry. So, just creating some type of a program, and, testing it out on like your industry friends like myself or Tuanni, and then slowly in your team meetings, of course, if you have a higher up, just pitch that proposal to the winery owner to let them know, like, this is the future, wine is this, and this will also help you gain more clients, because diversity equals revenue, diversity equals more exposure, longevity. So if you can tie diversity and inclusion, as well as different types of wine, demystifying the elitism of wine, and equal it to a value add to the vineyard owner, and then transfer that down to the staff, and then marketing purposes, it will be more rewarding. So that's what I would kind of do. Like, think of a project that you want to put together to propose to the owner of the vineyard you work for. And then from there, tie it to what is the end result. What does wine look like when you demystify the elitism of wine? Yes. You add more diversity. It increases to wine sales.
Yes, and to just add on to that, like the model for my business is wine is complicated, we make tasting simple, right? And that's been the business model since I started. And I feel like if a lot of wineries in Santa Barbara and Napa, wherever you are, if they look at current trends and they try to build those trends into their tasting room to make it fun and more approachable. So for example, a really popular tasting room in Santa Barbara is Sarlos and Sons, right? Sarlos and Sons, and they have like a really serious wine list. I mean, they have some great wines there. But it's so fun when you go there. They have this cupcake pairing. They have a photo booth. It's just such a fun environment. And I think that that's what wineries can do, and people can do in general, is just make wine fun, because it should be fun. Like in America, we drink wine at special occasions, or we drink wine with dinner only, or, but in Europe, wine it's like a normal beverage. It's not something that's for special occasions. It's not something for special people. It's just something that you drink. And I think that that's what we have to stress as wine professionals, that, for me, I think it's art. And if you like art, you'll like wine. It's like music. If you like music, you'll like wine, because it's so complicated. I can go on about that, though. Let's see. Does that answer your question, Simone, or do you have more questions?
That definitely, it gives me something concrete to work forward to, because I'm sure you guys have noticed as well, like on social media, followers for people that are Black in the industry have boomed.
Yes.
And I've gotten a significant amount of followers since I wrote this letter to the Central Coast, addressing the wine industry here and our lack of representation. And a couple wineries have reached out. I was a little disappointed, actually, that we didn't get more interaction from wineries specific to San Luis Obispo County and Santa Barbara County. But I've started a list of the benefits of me writing that letter, so I can show it to my boss. And like you said as well, the amount of followers that the vineyard has gotten since I've written that letter, and a majority of it has been Black followers asking like what we're doing, when we're going to reopen. We actually have our own vineyard as well. When are we going to do our next tours? So
I
Go ahead.
I think that that's a great point that you're making, right? So Santa Barbara is my stomping ground, right? That's when I started my tours. I would actually go to the Black-owned winery, Bordeaux. And I remember I would take busloads of 50 people to Bordeaux for these wine tastings. And part of it is we would walk through downtown Solvang and we would walk through downtown Los Olivos. Do you know how many times people stopped us and asked, like, what are you guys doing here? Like, is this a family reunion? They had never seen so many Black people at one time in that town. And we kept going and we kept going and we kept going. And the thing about it is, like, you find pockets of people in the group at different wineries, and people would want to taste with them because it'd be so much fun.
Yeah.
And I think that if old school winery folks can see that, making their tasting rooms more accessible, more welcoming to people of color, it will increase their revenue. Like, we like to drink. Like, the numbers, look at the numbers.
Yes.
It's a math.
That is so true.
Yeah, and we like to have fun, and we like to, and that's why my tour business was so successful, because there's a group of people who want to go out and get out of town for the day. They want to go to a tasting room, but where do they go? I have people calling me right now, and they want an experience where they're going to feel welcomed. So email me the name of your wine list, of your winery, and I will put it on my list.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. We have a question from Zoe. Zoe, do you want to ask it, or should I just ask the question? You can unmute yourself. Okay, I'll ask the question. So she says, I've reached out to a lot of my wine reps in DC area to start representing a lot more Black-owned wineries, as they're very sparse collection available right now. Despite all the wineries that I know of, are you thinking of reaching out to different markets in the States? So I guess you want to know if these African-American wine brands are going to reach out to different markets. Alicia and I talk about this all the time. And I've been like racking my brain and trying to come up with a system that will help distribute these wine brands, right? And so that's partly what Wine Over LA is because you can get 12 different wine brands in a box delivered straight to your door. I think it's 42 different states. But that's my part in making sure that they're available across the country. Alicia, can you talk about the problem with the distribution of these wine brands in different states?
So when it comes to distribution, especially of smaller brands and brands of color, because we're so new in the production of wine, when it comes to get regional or multi-state distribution can be pretty costly. So with that being said, few of our brands, but it's changing, are large enough to meet the production levels of major distribution houses. So for example, if a Southern Glacier, I'm just using them as an example, their portfolio, they intake large brands. So like there are certain African-American brands that are probably celebrity driven that have an account with Southern Glacier that offers multi-state distribution. So if Tuanni was able to, did a Wine Over LA and she received one of those celebrity brands, she can get them to all her customers, or they can go to the store and get it, things like that. So it has to be, a lot of our brands are not at the higher level production levels. So with that, I work with smaller brands. But for me, it's finding other distributors that is willing to take on the inventory that I have. So if you're in DC, I have to partner with you and send over cases of wine, but you have to be licensed in order to do that commerce. So that's the gap that we're having, is that there's not enough minority-owned or Black-owned distributors. There's only 5 or 6 of us worldwide, in the United States. And then the lack of capital. It takes a lot of money to have wine. I store wine. I have to pay storage fees. I have to pay taxes. So all these things, and that other person has to have the capital. So it's no 60-day, 90-day net. You have to pay on arrival. So I'm not saying that we don't do that, but traditionally our businesses lack capital and access to resources.
Yeah.
So for me, I focus on California, but I can do multi-state, but I have to have, you know, I work with suppliers and I prefer to work with us, but you know, things like that. So that's kind of like the technical part of it. But you know, we're gonna solve that problem soon. You know,
We are solving that problem.
yeah. Well, we're solving it from your side, but as far as like the other, like there's other parts that you know we could talk. We talk about that goes beyond that. For events, yes, but for other type of things, distribution needs to be more diverse. And I'm working with my company where I'm going to become a supplier of every large distribution house as a minority supplier, so that can be solved, so we can use their resources to fund it. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm working on doing for my company. And I encourage every other Black-owned distribution to become a supplier of a major distributor, so that then you can do that multi-state commerce.
Nice. I love solutions. Very good. Awesome.
Thank you.
Let's see. So Zoe has another one. What's the best way to support? Buy direct from wineries now, while I put the pressure on my smaller distributing houses to rep these wines. I'm a little biased. Let me answer it first, and then you can tell her the right way. But if you want to support the brands right now, you know, you can buy a 12-pack for Wine Over LA, and you can come to Wine Over LA and learn about them. That's probably the most immediate way to support the brands across the board, you know. And then if you have a favorite of those brands, join their clubs. Like, that's probably the best way to be a member of their clubs. Say, you know what, I'm going to support this brand and I'm going to spend $60, $80 a month on their wines. And you know, if you're the type of person like I was at one point, and you're a member of like 3 or 4 different clubs, you can hit 3 or 4 different wineries. But in the meantime, you can always just buy a 12-pack from Zuri Wine Tasting. You go ahead, Alicia.
The same here. You know, you can, I'll put all, like I said, I still have John Legend's wines that you can purchase from me directly. And, you know, Tuanni will give you that information. I do have 2 types of wine clubs, one that I'm launching and then one that I already have that, you know, you can support at thewinenoir.com. You can join my mailing list on Instagram in the bio and receive information about that. But also just from a business standpoint, just collect as much data and share it on your social media, share it within your business network in the hospitality industry.
Yep. That's the best way to support. Any more questions? No more questions? Okay, let me just check Facebook really quickly to see if we have any questions on Facebook. No, okay, so we are good. We have a few people watching on Facebook, but we don't have any questions. If you guys don't have any more, we'll let Alicia go. And thank you all for joining the call. Thank you so much, Alicia, for telling us all about your brand. Can you tell people one more time how to get in contact with you?
Yes, go to the Wine Noire, and that's www.thewinenoire.com. And that's the same as my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn handles. And you can email me at info@thewinenoire.com and I will respond.
Yeah, I put it in the text too, just in case. You might be a little dyslexic like I am sometimes, but it's the Wine Noire with the E.com. Thank you so much. And we will be back on Wednesday. Wednesday, we'll be back on the diversity wine route, and we are going to have Bob, oh my God, I can't say his last name. I'm going to call him Bob J for right now, but he's from Vinos Unidos, and he's going to be here, and he's going to be talking to us about Latinos or Mexican Americans in the wine industry. So I'm super excited to talk to him. And remember, all these winemakers, we're talking about diversity right now, but they're going to be with us on Zoom on July 26th, I'm sorry, and they're going to actually be doing a virtual tasting of their wines, of a couple of one of their brands, and then they're also going to be available for questions about that wine, questions about their brand, here to tell their story. So if you can, make sure you sign up for Wine Over LA 2020 online. Thank you all for coming to the Zoom call. I appreciate you. If you have any more follow-up questions, just shoot me an email. My email address is tuanni@zuriwine.com. I'll put that in the text. And okay, oops, let me spell it right. Perfect. Thanks, everyone. So that's my email address if you have any follow-up questions.
Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Yes, have a good rest of your day. Thanks.